We should be back now, right? Moving the cursor in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you for telling me. Fortunately, this material doesn't come up for testing for like almost a month. So, okay. The trachea brings our air in and also out, okay? And then it splits here and here where you can't see, it's overlapped. This is the primary bronchus. The other primary bronchus is on this side. If you ever swallow something and it goes down to your so-called windpipe or trachea, it's apt to get lodged right here because this is more straight down. And that's usually where something like a marble might get lodged, not on this left side. And then the primary bronchus, no exchange of gases, just move them along and it splits again in here. This is a secondary bronchus, also known as a lobar bronchus. Secondary bronchus is a lobar bronchus because it goes to one lobe. A split coming off of it will go to the next lobe, and that's another lobar bronchus. We have one here that's showing, one down here doesn't show, and the one here does show. We have 5 lobes to the lung that you can see here, and each of them is served by one lobar bronchi, okay? And you can also call them secondary bronchi. The 5 lobes are so easy to name. On the right side is the superior lobe of the right lung. We just call this right superior. Then the intermediate or middle lobe, and then the right inferior. On the other side, a large lobe called the left superior, then the left inferior. Between the left superior and inferior is a fissure. This is an oblique fissure. It's not labeled here. We'll find it labeled a little further on. This is oblique at an angle. Know that. Here's another oblique fissure on the other side. Both lungs, there are 2 lungs, have an oblique fissure. The additional fissure on the right lung is here. It's called the horizontal fissure, and it separates the upper 2 lobes. Once the secondary bronchus enters into one of the lobes, and it only gets one, it will split. And anastomose is the proper word, but I've never heard anybody use it. So it splits and spreads into smaller vessels called tertiary bronchi. Okay. Trachea, primary bronchus, secondary bronchus, and now it's splitting into smaller pieces. These are tertiary bronchi.
Charlie?
Yep.
So the right side does the left side have a horizontal fissure or
No.
just the right side?
No, just the right side.
Okay, thanks.
These splits in this picture here, since we're on the left lung, here's the separation on the left side by the, no, the picture's not good enough. It looks like the oblique fissure is here. It looks like the oblique fissure is here. It can't be in both places. So anyway, the subdivisions get smaller and smaller. The tertiary bronchus becomes the bronchiole. And then we have the terminal bronchiole, smaller still, and many more of them. And then we'll get down to the alveolar sac. Doesn't this look like some sort of blackberry? And go in, and we'll see the inside in just a second. The trachea has cartilage C rings. It has extra cartilage support. It needs it or it would collapse and it would never open again. You couldn't breathe it open. You couldn't force it open. Okay, because it's wet on both sides. The primary bronchus, you can see it, has rings also. These can be complete, go all the way around. We don't have to worry about the esophagus being behind them. These don't even have to be rings. They can be small bars of cartilage. Anything will keep the primary bronchus open. The secondary bronchus has cartilage also, and the tertiary bronchus has cartilage. That's it. The trachea, primary, secondary, and tertiary bronchi have cartilage to keep them open. The rest of the pathway, the bronchioles, the terminal bronchioles, this one doesn't show the respiratory bronchiole. Everything else can be opened just by the pressure of breathing in and breathing out. So the first passageway that doesn't have cartilage is the bronchiole, because everything before the bronchiole has cartilage. We talked about this the other day when we talked about serous membranes. The lungs are lined by the visceral pleura, and the thoracic wall, chest wall, is lined by the parietal pleura. The space between the lungs, we already said, is the mediastinum. And here's a representation of an alveoli. Lots of times when I come across a picture like this, it looks pretty, it looks interesting, it looks too complicated for me, but then I look at it and all of a sudden it makes sense. Okay. Here's a bronchiole coming in. Now the bronchiole is very small already, okay, and it can subdivide, and it can subdivide into terminal bronchioles. Then you get a subdivision here, and it's not listed, respiratory bronchiole, the next one. And then it enters into an alveolar sac. Here's the alveolar sac here. Looks like a bunch of bubbles. The air comes into the sac, it's a dead end. And the last thing the oxygen coming in will touch are these bubbles. These are the alveoli, showing up right here, the alveoli. That's where the gas exchange occurs. Okay, they're showing pulmonary capillaries here surrounding the alveolus, alveolar sac, taking up oxygen and giving off CO2. The oxygenated blood is coming in through the red. It exchanges, and the deoxygenated blood goes back out. Okay, going back up to this little chart that might have been confusing a while back, we have two lungs. Each receives a single primary bronchus. These divide 3 and 2 to make the 5 lobar bronchi, going to one to each of the 5 lobes. The tertiary bronchi are the next to be formed. They're smaller, they form within a single lobe. By that I mean there are 5 lobes, but within each of the 5 lobes singly, the secondary bronchus that has reached that lobe splits into tertiary bronchi. These keep subdividing to bronchioles. These subdivide to terminal bronchioles, which is more of an idea for us than it is anything else. The idea is that it's a smaller passageway. And a smaller passageway still, the respiratory bronchiole then attaches to the alveolar sac and to the alveolus. Okay, there's a list for you, moving on to something different quickly, a list of heart structures. This is going to be useful for both lab and lecture. The heart will be covered in lecture, of course. The heart has to be covered in lab too. And here's a list of structures that you'll be responsible for. So when you finally do your reading or start it after the practicum, please, okay, practicum first. Print this list out or have it on the screen for yourself so that you can begin to hone in on these structures. Of course, we'll be doing it in lab. Okay. The quiz at the bottom of the page here is to cover the urinary system and the respiratory system. This is a practice quiz. They never have points associated with them. They, no matter what Canvas may say, they're for improving your grade when you get to the lecture test. So watch for this. We're going to have lab. It's not October 13th, I realize that. No. And it's going to cover the ear. It's going to also cover the heart. It'll cover the eye and the brain. I'm just going to do the ear right now before I stop for a break. And I am going to finish this today. Okay, and then I'm going to go right into review for the other material. We have actually already reviewed all of the other material, but I have it set up in the discussion class 110. I have some photographs that you should take a look at. Okay, let me finish the ear though, or start it. These are the parts of the ear that you're going to need to know. And the pinna, auditory canal, tympana. Yeah, well, we don't need to rattle them off. We'll see them one at a time in just a second. Here are the pages that you'll want to read when I assign that, but I'll go over that with you. That's not a full chapter, and I'll sit down with you after probably next Tuesday and go through the book with you. Okay, here's a nice ear. The pinna is the outside portion of the ear that you can grab a hold of or wrap your mask around, of course. Okay, so there's the pinna. Here's the auditory canal. The auditory canal ends at the tympanic membrane, also known as the tympanus or eardrum. Right here, the eardrum. If we were able to go through that to the other side, there's another tube. It's called the eustachian tube, and it goes to the oropharynx. In some people, it goes to the nasal pharynx. It makes no difference. It works just as well. The purpose of the eustachian tube is to equalize pressure on both sides of the tympanum. Okay. If you have too much pressure on the inside or outside, or too little pressure on the inside or outside, sound is distorted. If you've ever tightened a drum or the head on a banjo or anything that stretches, even putting up a tent, you know, you can do it too tight, you can do it too loose. Okay. And we want to keep it equal on both sides. But when we go uphill in a car, and then our ears pop, okay? Before our ears pop, we actually don't hear quite so well. It's muddled, it's fuzzy. Once our ears pop, all of a sudden, oh yeah, it sounds good again. And what happens is the air, which is under lower pressure, as you go up the road, the air is allowed to come out of the eustachian tube. The eustachian tube has to first open. It's not open all the time. You can sometimes need to chew gum, sometimes need to just talk. Some people whistle. Some people don't do anything. They suffer because of that. Okay, but the eustachian tube will see that the air on this side going through the mouth and coming out to the ear, okay, will be equal. Have you ever been at the Palm Springs tramway that goes up to Mount San Jacinto?
Yes.
You got to get out and do stuff. I'm sure you do. You just don't want to tell me. Okay. Well, when going up, you hear the popping in your ears. That's fine. It's not too bad. But coming down, they come down pretty darn fast, it seems. And the popping is tremendous. I knew this, and I was chewing gum and everything to keep the canal open. Other people, they're totally unaware that anything was going to happen. They start going down fast, and the pressure is not equal on both sides, and the pain that it can cause. These people were screaming, and then finally it popped, and it was over. But okay, what else do we have here? Well, here's our old styloid bone, just as a matter of reference. Okay, here's the tympanum, and attached to it are the three ossicles. 1, 2, 3. The first ossicle is the malleus, then the incus, and then the stapes. We saw these and even had a question on the first practicum with these.
Charlie,
Yes,
what did you call those? They're attached to three
the
Oh.
ossicles.
ossicles? Okay.
Yeah. Malus, Incus, stapes, the one that does look like a pair of stirrups. Here's the vestibule that they attach to, this structure here. This has inside of it a fluid, and that fluid goes into these three rings called semicircular canals. When you tilt your head to a new direction, forward, backwards, right or left, or anything else that you can do, the fluid moves, and small hair-like receptors interpret this as your location or your position. They work opposite on the right side than they do on the left side. If they didn't, think about it, it wouldn't make it work. It wouldn't allow it to work. As you turn your head to the side, well, take your own head and tilt it to the left. And the fluid from your right ear is coming to the middle, and from the left ear is going to the lateral side. Do it the opposite way. Yeah. So the fluid moves differentially on one side versus the other, but it doesn't matter. You have learned since birth how to walk. You've learned how to stand, and in doing that, your brain has interpreted the location of the fluid to have certain meanings, meaning you're tilted right, tilted left, tilted forward, or whatever. So you have learned that. This snail-like structure is the cochlea, and it has the sound receptors. So as the stapes beats against or vibrates against the vestibule innumerable times per second, it will elicit a discharge from some of the receptors in the cochlea, which send that information to the brain. From the cochlea, we have the cochlear nerve come out. From the vestibule, we have the vestibular nerve come out. These two join, and they make what's called the vestibulocochlear nerve, which is cranial nerve number 8. We're very soon going to be learning the cranial nerves, not today, but the more often we can say it, the more often it will tend to sink in. The other structures I did not name are not necessary. Okay, I'm not going to do the brain yet. I said I wouldn't. I will as soon as we get back. Okay, so let me give you a break until 10 minutes after, if I could. And take this off. No. There we go. Okay, so I give you a 15-minute break here. Okay. Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I answered a question I saw in the chat that I said there are 13 cat muscles on the exam. By 13 cat muscles, I said slash photos. Okay, they can ask name, they can ask insertion, they can ask everything we said. This is not the time to be confused at all. Origin, insertion, action, and the name of the muscle for the first 48 at least. And then you look at the bottom of the page, you get some relief because you don't have to give origins and insertions where it says not applicable. Okay, but for the others, the idea is that you want to know them all. Okay, I know it seems like a lot. I was talking to one of our instructors, and she's retired now, and she confided in me that she doesn't know the origins, insertions, and actions herself, and yet she's teaching it. She said, I can't take the time to learn all those, but the students have to. Well, yeah, the students have to because that's what's expected at other schools. Not every school, but no, I don't know which one you're going to. Okay, and of course, how long will you retain it? Like I said, always say, we get to where we are on the basis of what we once knew, and we have now forgotten. We remember the things that are crucial, but we can easily retrieve and revive those things that we've forgotten when they become necessary. So anyway, I hope I'm answering your questions. I mentioned that there are 13 cat muscles the last time we were here, so I was kind of surprised that nobody seemed to remember that. But okay, any other questions that you have? If you're afraid you won't like my answer because it's too much, it's still the answer, and you might as well know it.
Charlie,
Yeah.
when you said that, I don't know if you said other students said it or maybe you just said it, that this was like the hump, getting over the hump.
Yeah.
And does that mean this is the hardest, one of the hardest tests?
Not to me.
Oh, okay.
But in reading, if you read, for instance, Rate My Professor, they
Right.
they rate the course too. They say this was hard, that was hard, and well,
that was the feedback.
Most of them, if they have an opinion of the part that they were glad to put behind them, it's this.
Okay, interesting.
Okay. Now, since you inadvertently brought up something here, sometime before the end of the semester, you're going to be getting a questionnaire. The school will send it out, and they want you to evaluate me. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I evaluate you. It's fair to you evaluate me. Also the course, and things like that. That I know I'm not supposed to say this, but I believe in the truth. And the truth is, what's going to happen to those collected by email evaluations? They're going to be gathered together, and they're going to be put into a separate folders, and somebody's going to get theirs, and I'm going to get mine, and everybody's going to get their folder. Okay, actually, it's not a physical folder anymore. It's a folder sent by email again. Okay, so they're going to send them to us. You know what we have to do with them? Absolutely nothing. There's no accountability. We don't have to read them, and I usually sneak a peek. Don't worry. Uh, uh, Once I opened up one of mine, and the first one on the top said that this guy should be fired immediately. Okay, so but the truth is, these go back to your instructors who don't have to do anything. They can open them. They can never open them. They can trash can them right away. Okay, the only people who have to read them are people who are hired full time and are in their first 6 years. They do have to look at them. If you got one of those instructors, fine. Uh, we all know there's instructors that uh, uh, do a better job, and some instructors that can't do anything. I've had them. You've had them. You'll have them again. You'll have both types, I hope, But filling out this evaluation, I don't understand the meaningfulness of it. I don't think there is any, because nothing, it may never be read. My feeling is that if you want to make a point and tell other students, steer, this is a good class, or other students and tell them, steer away from this class. Don't ever take this teacher, or this teacher was great, or whatever. If you want to make that kind of statement, do it on a place where it'll be read and read by the students. Who cares if the teacher reads it? So where's that?
Rate my professor.
Yes, it is. Rate my professor. Rate my professor. You read those, and all these good things are being said. And here's somebody bad mouthing, or a whole bunch of people bad mouthing, and then all of a sudden one guy says, "I love this teacher." Well, you take it with a grain of salt. You can figure out, if it's going to be a match for you. But you can't give that information to other people through this school survey. Okay, uh, it just doesn't happen. So I had one in there first year, said the guy looks like a biker dude. God, no, no.
Information that doesn't have anything to do with the class.
Oh, well, yeah, that's the fun of it, in a sense. But if it doesn't ever have any information for the class, you ignore it.
Right.
You go on to the next one because you're smart enough to read between the lines. But a lot of instructors, I fear, don't even read the lines. So just a heads up, if you want to call it that. I wish I hadn't recorded that. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thursday after P2, will we have class?
No.
Okay, thank you.
That's all you do. I will add on to P2 your Zoom credits, and that reminds me to remind you. The Zoom credits are only awarded if I have chapters 10, 23, and 24. Okay, if I have those three in, and I don't want them at the last minute, but the last minute I'll take them is noon on Thursday. Noon on Thursday. Okay, and so get those in. And nice thing about this online bit is that you can send them in to me and you still have a copy, so that always helps. Okay. And I'll add your Zoom credit in to the P3, which will bring it up quite nicely. Okay. Anything else?
How many points are we talking about for those Zoom credits?
You know, I honestly don't know. Okay, what I'm going to do is just go back and see where I left off the last time. Okay, and I know where that is. You had 7 Zoom credits the last time. You're going to have more this time, I believe. Okay, I'll probably give you a listing of the Zoom credits that I intend to give to each student by sending you one of those spreadsheets again tomorrow. Okay, so you can take a look at it, and you'll know the total possible, and you'll know the number that you have. And if you didn't reach the total possible, oh, you may have missed one, big deal. You may have missed a couple, big deal. I mean, it just tells you how many I have you down for. Okay. I haven't done it yet, but I have to go through, open up the attendance list for every day and mark them all down. Okay? That's not my favorite thing to do.
Charlie,
But one thing, hang on. I'm appreciative that everybody's here today. Today's real simple. I just mark everybody. Okay, who?
I came in one day late. I emailed you, but will it still count me in Canvas?
It'll count you in, even if you were there for a second
Oh,
or the
okay.
last second. But I will look to see how long you were there.
Okay, perfect.
If I don't think it's an appropriate amount of time, I won't give you the credit.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Most people are there the full length of time. Okay, let's go. Okay, finish the next section. This is the brain. This is all P3 stuff now. So you don't have to concentrate, but you get a first look. Okay, this is the brain from the underside here. These two little structures here and here are your olfactory lobes. Olfactory lobes and bulbs. They're there for smell. Back farther underneath, the largest part of the brain is the cerebrum for higher thinking. Farther back still, this gnarly looking structure is the cerebellum, and it has the more primitive portions of our activities such as breathing and temperature control. Way back here is the spinal cord. Come forward to this bump. It's the medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata sits under the cerebellum. When I say under, you got to flip this over because it's upside down right now. And then these two rounded projections at the top are the pons. I'll be giving you, you'll see in just a second, functions for all of these. Here's a brain in its proper orientation. And underneath is the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland secretes about 8 hormones, all of which we'll learn later. Okay. Pituitary gland would sit here on this specimen, but it has been removed. This is a sheep brain, but very, very similar to ours. Here's the sheep brain that's been cut down the middle longitudinally. When you cut it down the middle, you'll find in the forward compartment, you'll find a cavity here. And there's a cavity here. This one has a membrane over it. This one had a membrane over it. They were actually separate. These are the lateral ventricles. The lateral ventricles contain cerebral, spinal, fluid, which helps nourish the brain and also cushion it against blows, just because you have that fluid in there. This rounded structure, I should name this first part. Here's the lateral ventricle, lateral ventricle. I have another picture in just a second too. This thing surrounding the lateral ventricle is the corpus callosum. Corpus callosum. It means large or colossal body. If we go to the end of the corpus callosum, which is back here, here's the whole corpus callosum. You go to the end and drop off. This little gland is the pineal body. It secretes melatonin for sleep control. It's right next to this rounded structure that looks like a baby scallop. This is the thalamus. Thalamus. And then it makes sense that right below the thalamus is the hypothalamus, although it's not a distinct structure. This hypothalamus, you'll see, is the ultimate control of the autonomic nervous system. And I don't, of course, even expect you to understand autonomic nervous system at this point. You've got a lot to do yet. Okay, back up to the pineal body. We're going to head towards the cerebellum, but there's something in the way. And it's this structure here. This is the corpora, not corporal. It's misspelled up there. Corpora quadrigemina. The cerebellum has a tree-like design inside of it. And this design has been given a name. It's called the arbor vitae. Here is where it's labeled. Arbor vitae of the cerebellum. Arbor vitae. That means the living tree. This little slit is more important than it looks. It's the fourth ventricle. It is interconnected with the second and third ventricles, which are not shown, but it's also interconnected with the lateral ventricles. So the cerebral spinal fluid runs through ducts in the brain into the fourth ventricle, serving the same purpose I gave you a moment ago. It also then enters into the spinal cord itself. That's why they call it, of course, cerebral spinal fluid. You're going to get plenty of opportunities to see these. And if today you feel like, oh, I didn't get much out of that, you got something. You got your first introduction, which had to happen sometime. So I'm using it for today. Here's a nice brain, really. The lateral ventricle is large here, nicely shown. The corpus callosum is surrounding it. The corpus callosum goes from the right side of the brain to the left side as a continuous structure. Information that your right eye learns is received by the left brain, and it crosses over this corpus callosum in getting there. Here's the cerebrum up here. Higher thought again. Here's the cerebellum. Here's the fourth ventricle. Unlabeled is the arbor vitae. Come over to the back end of the corpus callosum and drop off. There's the pineal body. The next is the corpora quadrigeminus. This is spelled correctly. Here's the thalamus that looks like a little scallop. The hypothalamus is not labeled, it's right here. Here's the pons. Right underneath the cerebellum, this area is the medulla oblongata. And then once we pass the cerebellum and we're back out here, this is the spinal cord. Here's a list of functions of the various parts of the brain that when we get to P3, you'll be asked. So you'll need to know these functions. Many of them are common sense. There's a few that are not, and those are the ones you got to slow down for and learn. Okay. There's more on that lecture. If you want to go to it, you can. It's posted. But I want to do something else right now. What I want to do is actually let a few of you out early. I want to go to the discussion class, discussion area. I know that I think 4 people are not enrolled in that, can't get in, but you will be able to see the video recording that I will be making. Okay, and please, when I get there, you remind me. You can see I don't. My memory is good for anatomy, but it's not good for some common things here. Remind me to get that recording going. I want to go over there. I'm going to review all of the muscles, but not with all the names and everything. I'm going to review that you know which muscle is which on the cat and on the human. Okay. 51% of the test is in there. And the rest really is more home study than anything else that we do in this class. And you've had a lot of time for home study, and I hope you've taken advantage of it. So what I'm going to ask you to do, it's 3:34. I'm going to end the video here. I'm going to end us. Hang on a second.